Are cancer treatments misguided?
And one of the things that concerns me in the patients that I've interacted with that have undergone cancer treatments is that the existing way of thinking about cancer is perhaps not looking at everything. There's a researcher out of Boston College. His name is Thomas Seyfried, and his team have a completely different view on how cancer should be treated. And he's published research, he's published a book that speaks to how he believes, based on the foundational work and the Nobel Prize winning work of Otto Warburg, that cancer is a metabolic disease. These tumors are all basically acting in a very primitive, almost like bacteria type unicell format that is very different than our regular body cells normally work. Human cells, when they, or any cells, when they convert over to become cancerous, they stop using the regular processes of taking in oxygen to be able to essentially burn fuel. And instead, they start consuming massive amounts of sugar, massive amounts of glutamine, and this one researcher has found that if you cut off the sugar, literally cut it off, and then using the techniques that he's basically come up with to essentially downgrade or stop for a short period of time the glutamine supply to these tumors, there are ways to slow cancer or kill it off. And these types of therapies are not available generally at cancer centers in the United States. And that's, again, the scary part. You have former President Biden, who announced that he would have this moonshot to cure cancer, yet unfortunately, our conventional medical system is not using the most advanced possibilities to look at every angle as to how to cure cancer. Cancer is viewed primarily by the cancer doctors, the oncologists, and by most people who believe they know about cancer, they view it as something that's primarily a genetic condition. And if you believe Dr. Seyfried, which I do, it that's not really the case. Genetics do have a role, but very often the genetic findings that we see, the DNA changes, are downstream. They're not the cause of the cancer. And one would hope that President Biden and anyone else that's suffering from cancer at this point would be able to avail themselves to the broadest of treatments that could be availed to anyone in the United States. And that, unfortunately and sadly, isn't the case. And I think in part because the way of doing things is very hard to change. When there's a change in medicine, it could take 10 or more years before the new way of doing things becomes the actual standard of care for treatment. And ultimately, I think that's sad. We've had politicians for years basically saying how they're going to change the pharmaceutical industry, but let's not forget cancer is a big business. Okay, chemotherapeutic agents and the other modalities to treat cancer are huge moneymakers for hospitals and for the drug companies. And the reality is, here we are. I'd like to play a clip that has really a plethora of our elected officials over the years just talking about how they want to change the pharmaceutical industry. And that would include things like this to be able to know how we're going to treat cancer. You think it's not a problem until you have it. And now President Biden does. And guess what? We hope that everyone takes note and we all push to make sure that we change how our healthcare works.
Yeah, just to touch on that last point, cancer is mostly one thing and one thing only, and that's sugars. And our body turns carbs into sugars, and most people don't realize that. So if you want to starve a cancer, you want to get rid of sugars and carbs, and also starve. So intermittent fasting and stuff like that is really good for cancer because when your body is hungry, it seems like it starves the cancer before other things. But more than me, so go ahead and elaborate.
Yeah, I'll elucidate a little more on that. So you don't want to ever starve yourself because you want your healthy cells to be healthy and you just don't want to go and stop eating. There is a way to go about and transition to it. So the thing is to do it to seek out the teachings and the research of Dr. Siegfried and out of Boston College. Just Google it, look for it, and you'll see. And you'll find resources. Ultimately,
Don't listen to us. We're just dumbasses.
no, you can listen to me because I'm pointing people in the right direction, at least get the information, right? So the issue is that, so the Nobel Prize winning Dr. Otto Warburg did view that cancer was essentially a metabolic disorder. So the cancer cells are not burning fuel the way regular cells in the human body would be burning fuel. It's not using oxygen, it's using anaerobic metabolism, it's using fermentation, totally different process. But what Dr. Warburg didn't know, but that Dr. Seyfried did discover, there's a second energy pathway. So just cutting out sugar is one very important thing, completely eliminating it. Your body will still produce some sugar, okay? But you need to cut out all exogenous, all external sugars that you're going to eat. But then it's a much more complicated process that when the cancer is now being weakened by not receiving the sugar, you have to also impact the glutamine pathway. And because all the healthy cells need that too, you can't just stop it. And there isn't an easy way to stop it. If you do, you can't stop it for a long period of time. So there's a whole process. And then as far as starving, you want to starve the cancer, but you want to make sure that the person isn't starving their healthy cells. So basically the person has to be able to transition to a ketotic or ketone burning diet. And that's something that for most people eating a standard American diet have to train their bodies to do. Okay, back in the days we lived in caves and were hunting rabbits to eat, it was different. But now most people consume so much sugar and so many carbohydrates. Most individuals have not developed or have lost the ability to just transition over to ketosis. It's taken me a long time, and I'm metabolically flexible. I can not eat. There's one day a week, 48 hours, which I go without eating. In fact, as we talk now, I haven't eaten since yesterday. And it's not a problem because my body just switches and it's burning fat. But it's not something you can do just like flipping a coin. You have to learn how to do this. It's a process. And you need to find the clinicians and doctors that are familiar with how to do this. But the point being, we need to improve our knowledge of cancer. We need to improve really how we do things. And for anyone that's questioning, going, that's sugar, how could that have anything to do with cancer? When you go to be examined to determine definitively if you have cancer, one of the tests that's done is called a PET scan. And a PET scan is a CT scan that uses an injection of sugar that's laced with radiation. The cells that are going to scarf up the most amount of sugar are the cancer cells. They use an inordinate amount of sugar. So on the CT, you can clearly see the cancer cells, and you go, there's one there, and this area here has got cancer as well. So all doctors know, and certainly oncologists know, that cancers love sugar. Yet I can tell you firsthand how disgusted I've been when I've been at chemotherapeutic facilities where they're giving chemotherapy to patients with cancer, and then they come around with a little cart and they're offering cookies and apple juice and orange juice and candy bars laden with sugar. And when I brought this up to oncologists, they go, we don't run that department. I said, but they're your patients. I'm not saying that's going to cure them, but why are you giving the fuel to the cancer by letting this patient take a bag full of cookies and chocolate bars and at least not educate them and tell them that they need to be nibbling on something else? And that's part of the problem we have with our medical system. And again, all the politicians know it. They have known it. They know the drug companies are making all kinds of money. And what have they been saying for years? They're going to fix it. Let's hear them saying for all these years that they're going to fix it.
Talk is easy, action is hard.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Companies are putting profits ahead of people. Pharmaceutical drug prices are astronomically high, too high, way too high, and something needs to be done about them.
Here in America, it will not surprise you to know that we pay the highest prescription drug prices of any developed nation in the world.
UK, $41. United States of America, $424.
They're probably not as cheap as they should be or could be.
Why are the pharmaceutical companies charging double what they are in other countries for the drugs that her kids need to stay alive?
Found that the manufacturers set the price solely to jack up profits with no regard for whether families would be able to afford it. So it's time for government to step in on the side of the American people to stop this extortion.
There is no reason for a drug as simple as insulin, which costs $21 in Canada for a 10 milliliter bottle, to cost the equivalent of a mortgage payment or sometimes two mortgage payments.
The Democrats are the ones that allowed this to happen. They were the ones that were the protector of this pricing system.
Obviously, a video created by the White House but it's the words of the actual politicians that have been there for decades, okay, including some of the most. Bernie Sanders was always harping on this, okay, and he was right, but no one ever did anything about it. This is the first time ever that things are being done, and it's really sad because the drug pricing, the power of the pharmaceutical industry, the power of the medical industrial complex, if you want to call it that, is just so disappointing to watch. And it's hens are coming home to roost. It's ridiculous. I'm hoping that something comes of this. I'm hoping that there's some enlightenment. I'm hoping that maybe some of the politicians actually come together to help make sure that we change how we deliver healthcare in the United States so that we're telling the truth, we're providing all the available solutions at the most reasonable price by allowing competition and by being truthful. The next clip actually has RFK Jr. in a hearing, unrelated, has to do with, he's being basically questioned by Senator Murray about the budget for his department as the Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services. But he took the opportunity to call out Senator Murray because she was basically pushing back saying, why don't you have your budget yet? And he's, because we're working on it, we will have it. But by the way, I have something to say. And boy, did he say it. And I think our audience needs to hear it as well, because he's absolutely right. Here we go.
We're a new administration.
Okay, you can go
And I
down
also
that
want to
road.
point
I
out.
have just 2 minutes left. I asked you a specific
I want to
question.
point out something, Senator. You presided here, I think, for 32 years. You presided over the destruction of the health of the American people. Our people are now the sickest people in the world.
Seriously.
Because you have not done your job.
Seriously. That is an
What have
amazing
you done about it? What have you
Mr.
done about the
Secretary,
epidemic
I am here
of
to
chronic
ask-
disease?
Mr. Secretary,
What have
are
you done
here in
about the epidemic
Mr.
of chronic
Secretary,
disease?
Seriously, Madam
Secretary,
Chairman.
I would ask it to hold back and let the senator ask the questions.
Never had we had anyone push back like this. The elected officials all figure it's not, I'm not the doctor, I don't know. But that's the question. These are elected officials that are.
I just get the Rolex from the drug companies.
It's ridiculous. In the last episode, I think we mentioned how we had a clip that showed that for every member, for pretty much every elected official, there's at 1 to 3 lobbyists headcount that are always lobbying to make sure that no one interferes with whatever the medical.
Be sure to watch our other clips and shorts and the entire episode 12 of The Yojo Show